Hello, glad to see you on my channel. I really value it. And today I want to share with you a wonderful story. It's a dramatic story that will come as a total shock to everybody. It is a really amazing story. So enjoy watching it.
Standing in front of the mirror, Angelica raised her hands, gathering her hair into a high ponytail. The weather outside today was windy, and she couldn't leave the house with loose curls. Then her raven-colored hair would definitely get tangled in a nest. And even though on the spot, where she came secretly for the second time, she was invariably tidied up, prepared and dressed up, but she didn't want to look like that on the way. "Nanny, don't go away," said Jack pitifully, and the girl smiled at him through the reflection, winked, velvet rubber band wrapped around her thick ponytail. "I'll bring you a present from the bunny." Angelica had never forgotten this habit, and although she realized that it would spoil her brother, she couldn't help it. And if she left the house to the store, to school, and in general anywhere else, then on the way back, the baby necessarily grabbed something to buy an apple, a handful of candy, or some small, inexpensive toy, or even just plucked leaves from the tree a bunch, made up another tale that it is the feathers of a magical bird on which grow not feathers, and flowers with greenery, and amused Jack like this. "I don't want to," laughingly sticking out his lips, kept asking for his little brother. Sighing again, Angelica went over the tip of her nose with powder once more and walked over to Jack. The 5-year-old boy was sitting on the rug surrounded by toys. The girl hugged him tightly. It was as if they had to part for a year, not just a few hours. She wouldn't have left Jacuzka, but those were the conditions, and she, as a good girl, had to abide by them. However, Angelica had repeated it to herself many times. She had nothing to fear, probably. I want to believe it, but Angelica just couldn't refuse now. Too much depended on it. In general, Angelica could not say that her family is some beggars, not at all. She, together with her mom, dad, little sister, and 2 younger brothers, lived in their house. But this house was built a long time ago. And although Daddy worked hard every year to repair it, still decrepit rapidly, Angelica's family lived as if in the city, but on its outskirts, so that to get anywhere you had to go long, standing in traffic. At home was a small plot of land, where the girl's mother arranged a tiny garden for flowers and another vegetable garden. Dad worked at the factory as a foreman. Mom was a housewife. And although they tried to live frugally, but there was always not enough money. Angelica had long ago learned not to think about the fact that she dressed the worst in the class. It was lucky that when she was 15 years old, relatives gave her a phone. It was a very simple model of smartphone, but how great it was to change the button to this miracle of technology. But the biggest change in Angelica's life happened when Jack was brought into the house. As soon as she took in her arms a blanket with him, still smelling of frosty freshness, he was born in December, as if an arrow pierced her heart, she realized that she loves, madly adores this baby, that he is now for her the most important person in the world. Angelica took to caring for Jack even when her mother didn't ask her to. Quickly learned the science of how to prepare formula, how to change diapers, how to rock him to sleep. Strange it was, but with the arrival of a brother, her own future somehow began to seem in a better light. She had no doubt, as everything, and will finish school, enter the university, will work in parallel, and then, of course, will get a good job. Even 2. They'll make a new renovation, like in a fashion magazine. Everything will be fine. How could it be otherwise? True, when Angelica turned 16, these dreams, as it began to melt, like a fog over the meadow flood in the morning. She suddenly realized that everything is easy and smooth only in dreams, in books, in Hollywood movies, and in reality, it's not like that. Once, a long time ago, in carefree childhood, Angelica read fairy tales, in which in front of the protagonist or heroine, in the most difficult, hopeless moments, suddenly appeared something magical. Fairy, a good charmer or sorceress. They solved all the problems, realized the wishes. How stupid and naive it is. Whoever wrote such nonsense? That's what Angelica thought about fairy tales when about 2 months ago, she celebrated her 18th birthday. In fact, she celebrated it twice. First at home, where her mother set a large festive table on this occasion, in the center of which was a homemade cake on sour cream with a filling of boiled condensed milk and apricots. Her father even borrowed some money, and her parents offered Angelica to choose whether to order sushi or pizza. Relatives, neighbors, friends of parents. Some classmates came. "Where are the rest of your friends from school?" Mom asked in a whisper, taking her daughter aside. "We said you can invite whoever you want." "We agreed to meet later. We'll go to the club," answered Angelica, and raised her chin stubbornly. "Or are you gonna tell me I can't? It's already possible to turn 18. "No, daughter, that you," confused, and even as something guilty smiled parent. She was a little offended that now Angelica suddenly reproached her with the usual strictness of upbringing, against which earlier she did not particularly shriek. "Go if you want." "What club?" "In Dragonfly," answered Angelica. And it was a lie. The club she had named was considered a simple and decent place as far as such a definition could be applied to a nightclub. But there really weren't any pole dancers or big scandals. There often performed local musical groups, sometimes organized amateur contests. This club also worked during the day. There was even a menu of business lunches, and once a month there were organized dance parties for pensioners. In general, it was a place modest and decent. Even Angelica's parents had been there last year for the wedding anniversary of some family friends. In fact, Angelica was invited to Vulcan, and in such a club her mother would not have let her go for anything in the world. It was an elite establishment with a very peculiar reputation. Angelica was actually a little shocked when Maria, her best friend, told her that she had the opportunity to come to this place. It turned out that Catherine, Maria's older sister, could get them there. "Who else will be there?" Angelica asked her. "Only us. Our humble maiden company," Maria answered, and Angelica nodded, humming mockingly. Everything with this Maria was clear. She, like Angelica, had recently turned 18, and she, apparently deciding that age gave her some unimaginable points in her reputation, began to actively make friends with her sister, with whom she had previously only quarreled constantly. Quarreled because the sister, Catherine, was free, and they were competing for the attention of Billy, Maria's own father, who was Catherine's stepfather. Maria complained to Angelica that her father spoils his stepdaughter beyond measure, pays her tuition at the university, and his own daughter clamped even pocket money, forcing for new shoes to school to hand out flyers. But recently, Maria and Ekaterina suddenly found a common language, made up. In general, Angelica was not so much fun this time to celebrate her birthday, although a few of her closest friends came to it. But all the classmates, who even last year came to her house on her 17th birthday, were not there, because Angelica, most of the guys she knew at school, declared a boycott. And about this conflict, she kept silent at home. She was afraid, of course, that it would become known. But she herself decided not to talk about anything, because she knew it would be worse. Parents would interfere, they would worry, and in fact, nothing would change. The thing was that some time ago a video of teenagers with their faces covered with cheap masks or scarves chasing a dog was circulated among high school students. From the video, it could be understood that this stray creature had bitten one of them, and they decided to take revenge. As a result, the unfortunate animal was driven to the river, where the forces of spring at this time broke the ice. The tragedy was prevented by random passers, by they rushed onto the ice, risking themselves, and pulled the dog out. They wanted, judging by the video, to catch up with the teenagers and give them a fair beating, but they ran away laughing. And someone began to send this video in one messenger where all the high school students were sitting. Naturally, soon the adults, the head teacher, and the principal found out about it. Then it reached the parents of students. They began to find out who was capable of such cruelty. But the authors of the video turned out to be cunning and covered not only their faces, but also wrapped themselves in some rags, so it was very difficult to identify them by their clothes. So all this nasty story could have remained unsolved. But suddenly, the director received an anonymous note in which some of the homegrown Avengers were named. And what began to happen? The showdown was fierce and large-scale, and classmates soon found out who had made denunciation, as they themselves called it. Angelica, naturally, took a big risk, but she wasn't afraid, because she simply couldn't do otherwise. She truly cried when she watched the video. Poor dog. They must have brought her to the point of biting her, and not even hurt her, but just pinched her a little bit. How could they treat her so cruelly? She was still. It was clear that the puppies are waiting for Angelica. Sam said to her at recess one day, "You're dead." "Why?" she asked, confused, but she knew what she was talking about. "I don't care." She gritted her teeth. "They don't get enough. And well, what are they going to do to me?" It turned out that they did nothing. And not because of conscience, or because Angelica had a dashing protector. There was nothing like that. The point was that the instigator of the dog chase, 17-year-old Michael, had recently used certain services of Angelica, in which she was magnificent and incomparable. If it weren't for her skillfully created cheat sheets, he would have failed his math test in the quarter. And it was vital for him, because his father was at home. He worked shifts in the north and promised to give his son a beating if he brought at least a B. Michael knew that when his father went away and they stayed with his mother, he would be able to study again, even for D's. But in the meantime, in general, without good grades, he could not. That's why he, having learned that it was Angelica pawned them, using his authority arranged everything so that the other boys did not dare to think about how to offend her. Therefore, everything was limited to ignoring. Guys in the class, except for the very fearless, knew that for some time, must pretend that Angelica is nothing. Otherwise, it would be worse for them. That's why almost no one came to Angelica's birthday party on that festive day, or rather evening, because in Vulcan they came about 9. Angelica was taken out of thinking about what a stupidity all these tales of yours. Neat, but sensitive poke in the ribs elbow from the best friend. "Look how handsome he is. He can't take his eyes off me." Maria tossed back a silk strand of blonde hair. Angelica lazily followed her gaze to where her friend was pointing. It seemed that that part of the club was called VIP, and the tables surrounded by velvet sofas had to be booked well in advance. Angelica squinted at the brunette in the black suit looking right at them, and although they were a decent distance apart, that look gave her goosebumps. This man, he was handsome, but with that special beauty of a predator who was used to getting whatever he wanted. "Oh, he's coming here." Maria squeaked and danced on the spot. "Yes, positive thoughts materialize. Did you think of anything positive?" "Yeah, that good fairies don't exist," she replied, and her friend rounded her eyes and twisted her finger at her temple. "You've got something to think about on your birthday. You better smile. Maybe this handsome guy has a friend to match him. I can see him sitting with someone else over there. Have you already married him in your mind and thought up names for the children?" Angelica snorted derisively. She returned her gaze to the elite club seat. A friend of the searing brunette must have been sitting there, and he was no match for him. It was a skinny blonde in jeans, a blue plaid shirt, and a green sweater over it. Glasses on his nose. No, these two types are complete opposites of each other. One looks like a typical major and the other like a nerdy student. Meanwhile, the brunette was next to him, and Maria chirped with him. Angelica shrugged her shoulders. What else should one expect from a man in a club? Invites to dance, treats cocktails. Here, Maria, of course, has already melted and agreed to everything. "I don't drink, I don't dance," answered Angelica to the brunette who introduced himself as Max. Then why did you come to the club? He arched an eyebrow and rubbed his stubbled chin with his fingers. Just to unwind. I sit at home a lot. We have a family with many children, so I decided to change the situation a little on my birthday, I answered, and for this I received a sizzling look from Maria. Of course. A friend instructed that men should not in any case dump their problems at the first meeting. But Angelica was just used to say everything as it is. After a couple of minutes, Max pulled Maria to the dance floor and Angelica, sighing, decided to go to the bar. Fortunately, it turned out that there were non-alcoholic cocktails here, but they cost so much that it was possible to have a normal meal on the food court of the shopping center. Sighing, Angelica was about to part with the money with pain in her heart, but then she heard a pleasant, and at the same time so commanding that it gave her goosebumps, a man's voice. "I'm paying for the lady." It was Max's intelligent-looking companion. "Thank you, but..." Angelica tried to object, but he waved his finger in front of her nose and smiled disarmingly. "It's your birthday today. My treat and congratulations." "Well, thank you," she murmured timidly. "Angelica," she decided to introduce herself. "Barry," he smiled. "And he's handsome." Suddenly, Angelica thought, looking at the blonde man, about 25 years old, not older. The glare of colored lights from the dance floor reflected on his glasses, but it seems that his eyes are green. "Are you here alone?" he asked. "He's already ordered for himself from the bartender. A friend is dancing with Max. Catherine is Maria's sister, but she left when we got to the club." "No, I asked if you were alone. I mean, did your boyfriend come with you?" "I don't have a boyfriend." Angelica was stunned at the insolence. "Just about whether you have a boyfriend. Catherine did not tell me," shrugged his shoulders with the most nonchalant look blonde. "What? Catherine? Why does she tell anyone about me at all?" The girl burst out. "I'm sorry." She shrugged it off. "Are you and Catherine friends?" "Let's say so. I know her." "Do you think Max just approached you?" "In general, he easily meets cute girls, but not this time. Catherine pointed you out to him. Said that you rarely go to places of this class." "Yes, you're right. I know Catherine. And very well. From her work, you know, I'm not used to going around and around." He squinted, and Angelique thought for some reason that wild, predatory cats like tigers and leopards, they must be squinting their eyes, assessing their prey. "Catherine is an escort. Started at 18. Not an extra-class girl, but she's in demand. And you want to know what she does best." He moved closer to Angelica. She didn't answer. She didn't want to know. She was actually just shocked by this information. "Recruit new recruits. She's paid to do it, of course." The sister, as I know, refused. "Or did you think Catherine invited you here out of the goodness of her heart?" "No, she's decided, shall we say, to take a tidbit like you for a spin. Her plan is simple," Barry grinned. "Introduce you to some man in her circle, you know what I mean. And then get you a little drunk to make you more cooperative and encourage you to spend the night with him. He'd leave you a decent amount of money in the morning, especially since you're a virgin." At the last words, the blonde man's fingers suddenly ran gently over Angelica's hand, which was lying on the bar, and then forcefully dug into her wrist, preventing her from jumping up and leaving. Sha, don't be afraid. I'm not Catherine's client. I just know who she is very well. And my brother, Max, likes your girlfriend better. I just wanted to warn you." "Thank you." Angelica barely managed to squeeze out of herself. "How is father's medicine?" asked Angelica later, closer to dinner, when they took together with his mother to prepare it. "Nothing," Julia sighed. "You know what the prices are. I'm afraid he will have to do without it for the time being." "How?" "He's got a bad back." "You think I don't know how my husband's back hurts?" Mom's eyes narrowed dangerously. "He'll take the pills he has. And these, we'll look for cheaper alternatives. He'll get through it somehow. Have you ever heard him complain?" Here, just because Dad doesn't complain doesn't mean he has the strength to take it. Well, what else is there to do, daughter? Julia put the peeled potatoes aside and started to carve the chicken, which was to be used for 2 courses at once, first and second. Let's just enjoy what we have. And what we don't have, it's not worth thinking about. It was very strange, but this day Angelica especially keenly perceived everything that seemed already ordinary and even habitual. That the roof in the house, even if you look at it from the street, you need to fix. And what is going on inside? The rains will come in the fall, and by that time everything must be fixed. It was just painful to listen to Jack trying to read a book, stammering through the words. Poor baby. Missed a few sessions with the speech therapist. And now, please, everything is worse again. And there were 1,000 other reasons to think about the fact that their family needed money. Very much. On Monday evening, on the way home from school, Angelica turned to the park and, choosing a bench in a secluded place among the lilac bushes, dialed the number left. Hello, Barry. It's Angelica. The young girl's fingers frantically clutched the hem of her skirt. Can we meet? I want to talk about your proposal. The guy said he would be there in about 20 minutes, and Angelica told him where to wait for him. Then she called home and told her mother the first thing she thought of, that she had met a friend who had already finished school, and that she wanted to sit and talk with her for a while. Mom sighed as usual and said that it was okay. Barry showed up about 15 minutes later. A scarlet sports car dashingly pulled up, and he got out. Come on, sweetheart, let's talk. And I will not sit in the car. Suddenly slowed down Angelica. Strange you, he grinned. Talk about all sorts of things, not afraid and agree, but sit with the car afraid. All right, there's a cafeteria over there. Shall we go there? Okay, and I'll pay for myself. In case you don't owe me anything if you don't want to and refuse. He grinned again. So young, and already so cunning and so mean. All right, have it your way. They went into a cafe and ordered a cup of coffee. Angelica immediately added more sugar to it. She always had a craving for sweets if she was very nervous. So what do you want from me? The girl asked bluntly. And what are you willing to do for that kind of money? In his voice, you could hear the unconcealed sneer, but he looked at her seriously. Too seriously. I just want to know what you want. I want to know exactly what you want. And then, I'll tell you if I'm up for it or not. I get it. Barry was finally ready to get to the point. And first of all, I want to make it clear that whether you agree to this or not, it has to be kept top secret. And guess what? He pulled out his wallet, and several red-colored bills dropped on the table in front of Angelica. If you refuse and keep your mouth shut for at least 3 months, then every week you'll get. He pressed the money with his fingers. The same amount. For not talking. It's important to me that I can, so to speak, carry out my plan with the other girl. And that no one gets in my way. Although I'll admit I don't need another girl, because you're perfect. Perfect for what? I still don't understand anything. It's really hard to understand. Barry grinned, and it can be kind of crazy. But believe me, it's worth it. So, I'm not the one who needs the favor. It's my grandfather. He's, it's not gonna be in the press. His doctors are very good at keeping secrets, but my grandfather has some memory problems. He spent his whole life striving for a lot of things, and he knew how to get them. But this is about material wealth. He came into business when he was already, in fact, almost retired. And yes, he had dangerous confrontations with gangsters and fighting with competitors. He withstood everything. But now, no, I wouldn't say he's broken, but it's hard for him. He's sick. His heart's failing. It could all be over at any moment. I didn't see my grandfather much growing up, but I owe him a lot, and I want to make my old man happy, so to speak. I want him to remember something. And not just remember it, but actually get it. You want to make him happy. With my help, Angelica said cautiously. Yes. Barry looked at her as if he were groping her face. He had been in love with a girl when he was young. She was from a family of poets, a real beauty. It had been an affair, passionate and hopeless, fatal. Grandfather had to give her up to another man. And then she died in the prime of life. Grandpa never got over her. No, he got married. And as far as I know, he and Grandma had a wonderful family. Everyone should have a marriage like that. But that first love, he keeps bringing her up more and more. And I thought I could give him a gift. You know, it's really great that you came to the club. I managed to snatch you from Catherine's clutches before the irreparable would have happened. You see, I've been noticing you for a long time. I noticed you. Angelica listened, holding her breath. She was beginning to understand something. But it all didn't add up to a single picture. Why don't you drink your coffee? He asked suddenly. I don't feel like it. Angelica answered. I see, he nodded. So, first, I went through all my acquaintances' girls who could keep their mouths shut. Such, unfortunately, almost not found, because the type of appearance needed rare. Then decided to turn to agencies, but cancel this idea. I just do not believe that in some escort like the same Catherine will not wake up first to squeeze out of my situation to the max, and she will not do something stupid. I did not know what to do. And then, it happened 2 weeks ago. Do you remember when you went to the market as a family? Angelica nodded. She remembered it well. They all went to the market to buy Sam some new clothes and some things for the house. I was just driving the car, stopped at a stoplight, and then, it was like lightning. I saw you. You were holding your sister's hand and smiling, and you were holding this huge cotton candy, 3 of them. You were walking in the park before you went to the market. I was amazed at the resemblance. Who? Angelique asked quietly, like a mouse squeaking. With her, said Barry, and with these words put a picture of a young girl on the table. Angelique stared at her own image in amazement. It was impossible. And yet, the stranger bore a striking resemblance to her. The same large, almond-shaped eyes, the same straight but slightly upturned nose, the same high cheekbones and well-defined lips. It was her, but her hair was curled in the fashion of yesteryear, and she was dressed accordingly. Her name was Casey. Grandpa had loved her all this life, and now, before he left, he could have her. You want me to pretend to be her? Angelica's voice trembled. See, everything's somewhat quirky in my family. Barry pulled the money toward her. Put it in your purse. Now, it's yours now anyway. She obeyed him, but for some reason she felt no emotion about the funds she'd acquired. She just did what he told her to do. What he told her to do. It's a big house. It's been built a long time. Here, look, Barry, while we were waiting at the traffic light, took out a notebook and quickly drew a plan of the house on a sheet of paper. See how it's kind of divided into 2 parts. This one all belongs to Grandfather. He has a winter garden there, his own gym. What are you looking at? He's an old man, but he's in good health, and he does a little exercise, as the doctor says he can. Max's grandfather, as I said, doesn't like Max. Max, by the way, reciprocates him. Barry grinned. So he doesn't hang around, don't worry. But at the same time, I repeat, he talks to his grandfather a little bit. They fight every time they almost meet. After 5 minutes, however, Max goes on the back. He still respects the old man. But still, in general, Grandfather decided that it is better for Max, if he is a guest, to sit on his half of the house and do not go to him unnecessarily. Where do you live? Same place as my brother, but I spend more time with my grandfather. We have a lot of common interests. Unlike my brother, I realize that it's better to please my grandfather and be a decent grandchild that he could be proud of. Is that why you're doing all this? Are you trying to please him? Isn't that? It's kind of, well, indecent. What do you mean? Barry squinted. You said it yourself. Angelica sighed. That Grandpa's not quite. That he has memory problems. You mean you want to? I don't know if I'm doing the right thing. I think I'm doing the wrong thing. I mean, let me be honest with you, okay? Okay, I'm listening very carefully. Barry answered calmly. It turns out that I will push your grandfather with this image. I will push him deeper into madness. Angelica finished quietly. What if he gets confused about reality? He's already so old. No, I cannot. This is just inhumane. Old people should be taken care of so that they stay in their minds longer, not like this. No, I cannot. And she, squirming on the seat, tried to open the door from the car. Barry growled at her and caught her under the elbow and yanked her back. First of all, we're in traffic and in the middle of the road. You'll get run over if you get out now, I guess. Secondly, you seem to have misunderstood me. I'm not trying to drive Grandpa crazy. What do you have in mind? Barry's got a nasty smile on his face. Wow, you're a fantasist. You think I want to put a retro-looking girl under the old man so he thinks the love of his life has come to him like a ghost. No, you know, I may not be the best specimen of a man, but I'm not like that. No, honey, your role will be 100 times simpler and yet more complicated. I really just want you in that role, to be a comfort to him, a living reminder of the past. The row of cars ahead finally thinned out, and the Major's car moved forward. Grandpa knows I'm bringing him a girl for a good time. He knows she's not just an escort. He wants a girl to sit next to him, smile and listen to him talk about the past. That's it. Your job is to be a lady from the Soviet Union and listen to all his stories. How? Angelica rounded her eyes. But, I mean, you said so then. I thought. So, I won't have to with him. Well, lie down. She finished completely crimson. Actually, if everything goes as it should then, you'll sleep with him, Barry finished seriously. Angelica watched as the familiar cityscape changed to neat rows of mansions behind high fences. The car drove into a cottage neighborhood that had grown closer to the outskirts of the city more than 20 years ago. The car stopped at one of these mansions. It looked like a miniature palace. It passed the guard post, a green, immaculately trimmed lawn, a small garden, and finally stopped at the porch of the house. That's it. We're here. Barry gallantly offered his hand to Angelica as she got out of the car, but she ignored him. Everyone, come on in, he added, and for a moment, though it wasn't really necessary, he touched her back as they entered the house. But she ignored that too. Okay, we don't have much time. Follow me. Barry took Angelica into the room, and she rounded her eyes from the threshold. It looked like he'd done some serious preparation. Because there was a table with a mirror, a lot of things like in a beauty parlor, and rows of hangers with all kinds of fashionable clothes, though Angelica wasn't very good at it, but they seemed to be from the 60s. Barry, hello. A woman in her 40s, blonde in jeans and a funny pink sweater with kittens, approached them. And this, I take it, is Angelica. Oh, lovely. Such a resemblance that, you know, you'd have to believe in reincarnation. Ariana, Barry smiled at her. I trust your skill. And please, get started already. The woman nodded to the boy and turned to Angelica. She looked at her with a piercing and sensitive gaze. So, work. When in less than an hour Angelica saw herself in the Rasta mirror, she was shocked. Her hair was styled in a style that added, as it seemed to her, 5 years of age. Her face seemed strangely pale, and her lips, on the contrary, too bright, juicy and scarlet, as if they had taken on the hue of ripe garden raspberries. Angelica was wearing a black dress with large white polka dots, and on her feet were lacquered shoes with a shot glass heel. The image was completed with short white lace gloves and large earrings with some red stones, but opaque, so it was definitely not rubies. The final touch, Ariana said, and spritzed the girl with perfume. Angelica smelled the fragrance, which was unusually delicate and yet strong lilacs, roses, and something else that reminded her of the delightful breath. How clean the air was right after the rain. Ariana stepped back from her and looked around, obviously pleased with the result. What a girl. You'll forgive me, of course, but fashion used to be much more feminine. What do you think, Barry? I can't say. The blonde shrugged his shoulders, but Angelique could feel his gaze on her, as if hungry, predatory. The important thing is that it's exactly what I need right now. So, let's go. Already? Angelica shuddered. Austin's just my grandfather. Barry grinned, and Angelica thought that grin of his, a man who was used to triumphing in advance and having everything go his way, would be a dream come true for her now. Perhaps even in her nightmares. He's not an old ghoul who preys on young girls. So let's go for it. Ariana dared the girl's timid question. What does she know? Only what is necessary, Barry explained. I hired her on the condition that she would make the girl from the photo and dress her, color her correctly, according to the fashion of those years. I pay her for her silence, generously enough to keep her loyal to me. Ariana works in a theater, a rather run-down one, he added. Then suddenly he turned Angelica so abruptly toward him and squeezed her shoulders so hard that she gasped in surprise and slight pain. Now listen to me carefully, and behave with my grandfather, as I say. Angelica crossed the threshold of the room as if a hungry lion was waiting behind her. The girl's heart beat like a frightened bird. It seemed to her that her arms and legs moved only barely under her weak will, but she held on. She was doing what she had to do, her back straight, her shoulders melted, her chin high, a warm, welcoming smile on her lips, her voice honey, and captivating charms existing for only one man. Austin. Angelica stopped. May I come in? The old man was sitting in a rocking chair by the tall French windows that were open wide. This part of the garden was not visible from the outside, from the part of the house which the young girl had approached, and presently, though there seemed hardly the right background circumstances, so to speak, for it, yet she admired it, because in this part of the garden there were impossibly many roses, tea and carmine scarlet, candy scarlet and snow white, amazing almost black and amber red. Oh, said the old man with a single letter, and his eyes brightened, and his face brightened. So that's who Barry was talking about. Come in, honey, come in. A warm woolen blanket was thrown over the elderly oligarch's legs, and his hands were on top of it. He raised his right one weakly, and with trembling fingers pointed to the wicker armchair opposite. Tea. Thank you. Only if you'd like some. I've already had tea. Now I'd like to. Just to look. At the garden and at you. Pretty. Do you like them? He nodded at the flowers. Very much, Angelique answered honestly. I've never seen so many roses before, not even in a florist's shop. There are varieties from all over the world, nodded the old man importantly. From Ecuador, France, Portugal, China. Who would have thought? Who would have thought that at the end of my life, I would find solace in flowers? Did you know, Casey, that an ancient Roman emperor at the end of his life retreated to his estate, away from the bustle of the capital, and began to grow cabbage? No, I didn't know that. Angelica shook her head. The only question is, the old man sighed. Did he always, all his life, need those cabbages? Because in that case, it turns out that he wasted the old time of his life, the wrong direction of the river of his youth. Or was there a time for cabbage? I'd wonder. Roses. Have I always needed them? Or has the time for fighting and bullets just passed, and it's time for flowers? You know, these roses remind me of a very interesting story. But first, let's have some tea. Austin took a small remote control lying on the table beside his chair, pressed a large button, and in a minute a maid in a black uniform appeared in the room. Tea, said the old man. Angelica was silent. Then, noticing that the plate had become dislodged, she carefully adjusted it. Barry had told her that she should take a little care when they talked. The tea was very good, served with an assortment of jams and jams. Then the old man began to talk about the times of his youth, when as a very young man he used to vacation at the country house of his great-grandfather, a man of great intelligence and strictest morals, who remembered the times of serfdom. "I'm tired. I'd like to lie down," the old man said simply and stretched his arms forward. "Help me, Casey." Angelica helped Austin up and slowly, with small steps, led him to the bed. It was a spacious bed, covered with a silk coverlet embroidered with motley peacocks. "Well," smiled the oligarch and walked over the girl with a very intense gaze. "Lie down first." Angelica remembered well what Barry had said about what his grandfather might want. Her heart skipped a beat. Goosebumps ran down her spine. But the girl didn't let it show. Only with an innocent smile she pulled off her lace gloves, sat down on the edge of the bed, and took off her shoes, then loosened the tight belt of her dress. She lay down and patted the palm of her hand next to her. The old man did not just lie down, but rather fell in beside her. That's fine, he sighed and settled his hand on the girl's body. In fact, he arranged it, just like that, without any lewd undertones. "Now we can doze off," Austin said, smacked his lips, and then closed his eyes and dozed off almost immediately. Angelica did not doze off. She lay quietly, not daring to move, even when the uncomfortable position made her body ache and then stiff. "Oh, it's you," Austin told her, who woke up abruptly. He looked at the girl a little differently than when she had first come in. "Go away." Barry had warned her that as soon as her grandfather told her to go away, because it meant that his psychological state had changed, so to speak, and the time of memories had passed, the time when he needed a living bridge, which would allow him to plunge into the past for a while. So Angelica did not hesitate, but not abruptly, got out of bed, and without putting on shoes, but only picked up shoes and gloves, left the room. Barry escorted her to the same room where she was, reincarnating. Ariana, he said, had already left, but Angelica had done just fine without her. Finally, having changed into her own clothes, the girl left that room. "Here's your money." Barry handed her an envelope, and she tucked it into her purse. "Next appointment is Thursday." "I can't." "Why not?" "I've got final exams to study for." "I'm afraid we've had a misunderstanding." Barry frowned, but kept smiling. "You realize you're playing by my rules, don't you? And I don't care about your exams at all." "Thursday. You'll be there at 6:00 p.m. Got it?" "Yes." "Understood," Angelique replied. Back home, she immediately put all the bills into her piggy bank, which was just a huge lavender-colored piggy bank. There was a latch at the bottom of the piggy bank, so that if necessary, the money could be taken out without any problems. But for the future, Angelica decided she would keep all the money in the bank. Not that she feared that her mom or Sam would accidentally find them, but it would just be safer that way. And she also suddenly realized that she hadn't thought about one very important question: how to tell her family where the money came from. But right now she was too tired to worry about it. So she decided that she would think of something later. In the following days and weeks, fortunately, no one was interested in how Angelica was doing with taking care of the old man. Her parents asked a little, and she answered vaguely. After that first time, when she had spent a strange time in the company of Grandpa Barry, Angelica could not imagine how it would happen again. But it soon became clear that the second time, the third, and the subsequent ones, that it all came easier. She'd come in, Ariana would give her some retro look, and the girl would talk to the old man. Or rather, he'd talk, and she'd listen. And almost always after these conversations he liked to sleep. Sometimes by himself, sometimes by taking sedatives or sleeping pills. At first Angelica was also very, very afraid that Austin would want to get from her something specific, indecent. But it turned out that the old man behaved very innocently. He could only hug, squeeze close to her, but the latter only in his sleep, nothing else. And sometimes she herself began to doze off at such times. And once Angelica realized that she Yes, she is sleeping with an elderly oligarch for money. It sounded, of course, terrible. But in fact, it was just that sometimes she really slept with him. Sometimes after these visits, Angelica went straight home. But then, one day, Barry suggested that she go out for dinner. Angelica agreed for two reasons. First, he said they had something important to talk about. Secondly, she had been so busy at home with her books that she had skipped lunch, and now she was hungry. Even her stomach was rumbling indecently. Barry took her to an elite, but not at all flashy place, and told her to choose what she wanted to eat. Angelica took everything she wanted, and the most expensive dessert because she was curious what was there. The dessert was not bad. And then Angelica decided to ask, "Tell me, why did you decide to do this?" "Well, if Grandpa has memory problems, why didn't you just go to a psychologist?" "You don't think we tried?" Barry said. Grandpa did go to one, but then he gave up on it, probably because he just had bad luck with a psychologist. One of them advised him to let go of the past, to forget it, to erase it. And Grandfather can't do it. He has been talking more and more often lately about the fact that the memories of the past, is the most valuable thing he has, and that no amount of money will not fix the fact that some of the memories are lost. Then he went to another psychologist. He suggested that he could help, but he said it would be hypnosis sessions. Grandpa doesn't believe in that stuff. You know, he's been trying to really put the past behind him. He's been trying for a long time. Traveling, hobbies, novels. What are you looking at? Just because he's old doesn't make him, with his millions, less attractive to a lot of women. You must realize that. But like I said, it's useless. And then, in general, I read in one book, and this, by the way, is confirmed by scientific works of some experts on the work of the human brain, that if you get something which has a direct relation to the past, then further this past will begin to rise in the consciousness in clearer images and details. I guess it's like putting together a mosaic. That's what I want. I want Grandpa to put his mosaic together, to make him feel good and relaxed about remembering everything that is important, and that he wants to remember. After that night, Barry and Angelica still met more than just at the Weasley mansion. It came out kind of spontaneous. Just sometimes they would have lunch together or dinner. Nothing fancy. There was no need to wear any fancy dresses to visit the same pizzeria or a small Georgian restaurant. They just ate and talked. And very quickly the topics of conversation became more than just what was going on between Angelica and Grandpa Barry. More and more often they talked, slowly, about everything in the world. About how Angelica and her family lived. Barry told all sorts of funny stories from his life. It turned out that, unlike his brother, he wasn't going to stay here to run the family business. Barry planned, when it came to accepting the inheritance, to leave reliable people here to manage everything, and himself to return to America to his father. But he mentioned it in passing. In general, there was quite normal, almost friendly communication between them. And it was very strange. But even stranger for Angelica was the fact that she absolutely did not want to stop all this. Now on the nose were final exams, but Angelica did not refuse more meetings. They have already become a familiar part of her daily life. But one day everything went wrong. That day Angelica was picked up not by Barry himself, but by his man Albert, who she already knew. He was a tall, taciturn guy who played the role of a bodyguard, personal driver, and also a responsible executor of anything. Angelica had barely had time to enter the house when Barry shocked her by saying that his grandfather had gone to the hospital with a heart attack. "It's canceled," the boy said grimly. "I'm going home then," Angelica said, but didn't have time to take a step. "Who do I see?" Max suddenly entered the room. That is, the hall of the part of the mansion Angelica was used to visiting. "How's the old man?" He turned to Barry. "He's fine. The doctors say he'll rest. Maybe you should find out for yourself at the hospital." "Why?" The brunette shrugged his shoulders. "You've already said everything. I don't like hospitals, and we have guests here, I see. His gaze settled on Angelica again, and she felt extremely uncomfortable. It's horrible, just like that time at the club. Angelica, by the way, had been less in touch with Maria since her birthday. She only knew that her friend was terribly upset because she had failed with Max, who, as it turned out, was only looking for one night's entertainment. 2 nights at the most. What's a bird like that doing in our house? Max stepped closer to the girl. Did you come to be a maid? Angelica, not knowing what to answer, threw a pleading look at Barry. They had never discussed the possibility that his brother might see her in this house. She's with me, Barry answered with such a calm, self-assured expression on his face, as if there wasn't a molecule of lie in his words. She's my girlfriend. Angelica froze. What nonsense had she just heard? Max, on the other hand, didn't seem to be shocked by it. He was just surprised and his eyebrows went up. I'm sorry, of course, but I didn't expect that. Well, he winked at Angelica. Has Cinderella found her prince? But be warned, he can turn into a wolf. With these words, Max left. What was that just now? Angelica asked. What was I supposed to say? Not about the maid, Barry muttered. They are hired through agencies. Actually, I have a good idea. It will work. It'll work. What do you mean? What do you mean? Barry was suddenly so close. I don't think he meant any harm. He was just excited. But with the force of his arms, Angelica was suddenly pressed against the wall, and his face was so close that she could feel his hot breath. You don't want to be my girlfriend. Then the visits here, by the way, would be much freer. And you'd be able to visit my grandfather in the hospital. I mean, it would look normal to others that we came together. But I don't want that. Angelica knew her face was flushing with the color of embarrassment. She felt hot on her cheeks. Why? Barry hit her with the question. Don't you like me? It's not that. It's not that. You're cute, but... So that issue was settled. Barry let her go and Angelica felt free, relieved. And yet, what horror. It was as if she missed his touch in an instant. What a horror. This was completely wrong. Don't be afraid, Barry said, opening the car door for her. I'm not going to take you out in public, so no one will know about this. They agreed to visit Barry's grandfather in the hospital the next day. Angelique was not surprised when they went not to a regular hospital, but to a private clinic. Of course, where else could such a man be treated? Barry. No sooner had the visitors crossed the threshold of this institution than a woman unknown to Angelica flew up to them. Barry, I found out everything. What's the matter with your grandfather? Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry I wasn't with you. She was a tall, gorgeous blonde. She could have been called even beautiful, if not for the fact that her features seemed artificial. A plastic surgeon had clearly worked on it, modeling what was current in today's fashion. Selena, Barry squinted at her. I didn't expect. Don't bother. Stop. He put his arm out in front of him, because the girl was obviously going to jump on him with a hug. We broke up, remember? But, Barry, the maiden cried, but so, carefully it seemed, she was afraid to show too much emotion with her face as not to ruin her makeup. It was a mistake. I'm sorry, please. Get out of here, the boy hissed angrily. How could you? The girl shrieked. We were the perfect couple. What did you swap me for? This. A finger with a long fingernail pointed at Angelica. You, what kind of redneck did you pick? What trash can did he find you in? That question went straight to Angelica. She did not want to participate in the squabbles of the major about his personal life. It was enough that she was already in trouble. But the contemptuous, disdainful, insulting behavior of this girl, Angelica just couldn't stand it. Barry's taste had simply improved, Angelique said, taking her companion by the arm. Grandfather, fortunately, is a good influence on him. I'm lucky to have a boyfriend. Angelica was swept along like a tornado, and reaching out her hand, She gently ran her palm over Barry's cheek and looked at him, literally in love. Barry realized it was better to refuse. Now she passed a mocking glance over the maiden. No surrogates. He chose natural perfection. It's the fashionable thing to do, you know. Come, my love. You owe me for talking to that plastic doll, she purred, dragging the guy behind her into the clinic doors. The unfamiliar damsel was left standing there, flapping her eyes. A couple of nurses, who had gone out for a smoke break, giggled among themselves. Not often they witnessed such a beautiful showdown. Well, wait for me, hissed the rejected blonde. You'll get it from me, chicken. Grandpa Barry, as expected, was in a private room. Hi, how are you? Asked his grandson, sitting down on a chair near the bed oligarch. Nothing, your old man will live, Austin grinned. Come here, he said to Angelica, who stood timidly at the door. Let me look at you without the image. You know, she is pretty. So and so beautiful. Oh, Seryoshka, he sighed and smiled sadly. That's the kind of girl you need, not these one-day butterflies. The doctor who had talked to Barry assured him that Austin's health was no longer in danger. But in order to exclude a second attack, it is important to follow a diet, to do special exercise, not to be nervous. Oh, what for? Julia, rounding her eyes, started sliding down the wall as well. Are you pregnant? You're gonna bring it in your hem. Whoa, Sam, who was taking off his shoes at the time, almost lost his balance. I'm gonna be an uncle to the son of an oligarch. No, I'm not pregnant. Angelica went into a screaming fit and started crying again. It's not my fault. What the hell is going on in there? Sam looked out the window curiously. What a ride. Angelica, and this is not your... The girl rushed to the window. She saw Barry walking through the pile of journalists, supported by his bodyguard. Then he entered the gate of their house, walked to the door, and in a moment appeared on the threshold. Barry's eyes were sparkling and not particularly kind. His lips were tightened. Angelica, he addressed the girl, who was close to fainting. Who are you? Julia jumped up to him, blocking her daughter. What are you doing breaking into my house? Barry. Sam wasn't confused. I'm Angelica's favorite brother. He was already shaking the young oligarch's hand. If you're a matchmaker, it's for me if my father isn't in the house. Well, not yet, let's say, not yet, Barry muttered. And then, delicately but resolutely, he went around Julia and caught Angelica in his arms. I love you, he said, and then kissed her lips fervently. Sam whistled. Julia made a strangled sound, full of indignation. Anna, who had already come to her senses and was terribly glad not to have to go to school, jumped on one leg and clapped her hands. Tilly-tilly-do, bride and groom. What the? Why are you ruining my life? I did everything you wanted me to do. Angelica shoved Barry's chest with her hands as they got into his car. The normal, that is, without strangers, conversation between them took place that same day closer to evening. After Angelica's father had returned from work and her whole family had been brought up to speed on the case, in which there was so little truth and so many lies. The journalists, to his credit, Barry, by the way, dispersed promptly. He simply came out to them, and a couple of them said that some of the newspaper may be closed if they are too much pressure, but if his chosen one will be left alone, then perhaps the most prudent may one day get an exclusive materials. Now Angelica sat in the seat next to Barry and sulked, but she wasn't crying. Would you rather I told your family what really happened? The girl shook her head negatively. I thought you said no one would ever know about it. That was supposed to be the case, Barry replied thoughtfully. I thought it was my brother, but he had no reason to do that. But now I know exactly who did it. Selena. That bitch is finished, Barry said glumly, and there was something in his tone that made Angelica, even though she thought Selena had done a disgusting thing, feel scared for that fool. Don't worry, he continued. Soon all this fuss will die down. We're not going to show up at any social events, are we? So they'll think it's just a fling and they'll forget all about it. What about me? My family? My mom thinks we're serious. This isn't the Middle Ages, the boy grinned. And I didn't ask you to marry me. You'll say we've broken up, which we're doing, by the way. The last said words reached Angelica not at once, and when they did, she looked at Barry confused. What are you saying? That I heard. Grandpa's going to be discharged soon, but he doesn't need your services anymore. You've done enough. So I won't come anymore, Angelique said quietly. So, we won't see each other again. Isn't that what you wanted? Snorted Barry. To make more money and never see me again. They looked into each other's eyes. Angelica pressed her lips together and raised her chin. Yes, you're right. That's exactly what I needed. I remember that it was all a secret, and I'll never tell anyone about it. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to earn. Hey, where are you going? He asked, watching the girl get out of the car. I'm taking the bus home. I just thought you'd stop by the cafe. Why? Angelica grinned. You said yourself that we're done with everything. We don't need to see each other anymore. Goodbye. It was incredibly difficult to continue to go to school and take exams when everyone in the school knew about the rumors that had spread like circles on the water from a thrown stone. But Angelica held on, not paying attention to anyone, and studied hard. And I thought you were my best friend. Maria accused her. Why didn't you tell me anything? There wasn't much to tell. She tried to justify herself. There's nothing serious between us. And besides, we've already broken up. Really? Maria was surprised. I don't believe it. But it's true. Okay, I believe it. It's just, you're not like that lately. Angelica blamed it all on the stress she had been under, but she hadn't gotten the high marks she had hoped for on the exam. The graduation went well. A fancy dress was bought. Angelica could have afforded a boutique outfit, but she didn't do it. She still couldn't figure out how to explain to her parents how they suddenly had a lot of money. It seems that the only option left was to go to university as soon as possible and go to work, and then it will probably have to lie that she found a part-time job somewhere and that the salary is high. How to be otherwise, Angelica did not know just. Parents, fortunately, the news of her parting with the heir of the oligarch took calmly. Mom said that it was for the best, because a romance with such a man could not end with anything good and serious. But San was upset, but also supported his sister, saying that she will still find a guy and 1,000 times better than this Barry. Angelica. The girl heard her being called. Coming back from the store, her mother had sent for bread. She was surprised to see Max behind the wheel of the stalled car. Get in, he nodded. Why are you bossing me around? She frowned. I'm sorry, princess. Pulling his sunglasses off his face, Max gave her a hard stare. My grandfather has some business with you. I don't understand. Neither do I. But he said he wanted to see you. And he sent you. And sent me, Max answered, and it was clear that the boy was not at all satisfied with his role as messenger. But I don't understand. Look, can't you just get in the car? He wants to see you. I'm coming from the store. Angelica waved her bag. I went for bread. I'll take it home and go out. I'll be there in 5 minutes. Max could only clench his jaw. What a naughty girl. He couldn't understand how his brother could get involved with her, although it was worth to admit Angelica was a real beauty. While the car rushed through the city, Angelica thought about what could need from her grandfather oligarch. Did he really want to continue their strange meetings? And even if he would pay even more for them. But she realized that she was simply not ready to repeat it. It was now even creepy for her to remember how she had played the role of his first love. As if there had been nothing indecent, nothing like that. And she couldn't repeat it. Max kept his eyes on the road and didn't cast a single glance at her until they arrived. And then offered his hand. But she ignored it and got out of the car herself. They entered the mansion from the familiar entrance, but went into a room unknown to Angelica, which turned out to be a spacious study. Combined with a library, Austin was sitting at a desk. Next to him stood a man in a strict suit. And there was Barry. Angelica realized from the look in his eyes that he was surprised to see her. "What is she doing here?" He turned to his brother. "What are you doing?" The boy jumped to his feet. "Sit down," Barry, his grandfather, told him. "I'm the one who invited Angelica. Come in, dear, sit down." "Good afternoon." Angelica sat down in the seat offered to her. "I suppose you are all wondering why I have gathered you here." The old man began slowly. "I've been thinking for a long time. And I had time to think while I was in the hospital. The atmosphere there, you know, is very conducive to philosophical reflection. And here's what I've decided. Oh yes, before we begin, let me introduce you." He pointed to the man next to him. "Albert, my lawyer. So, let's begin." Austin started talking about the fact that he had kept his business running, ruled over all things for many years, that he had made sure to provide all the material goods for his family. But now age was taking its toll, and he was thinking that he just wanted to take a break, to let go of the things that had been holding and demanding his attention all this time. He said that, of course, he had already made a will in advance, where he divided everything between his son, as well as his 2 grandchildren. And so that you are now learning to rule everything, I decided to give something through a gift. The old man patted the palm of his hand on the puffy folder with documents lying on the table. "This matter will be settled today." Angelica listened to everything and more did not understand what it has to do with her. What is she doing here? Now for the unpleasant part, Austin suddenly said. "Unfortunately, you grandchildren, as well as my son, I have something to reproach. You have upset me a lot." "Grandfather," Max started to say, but the man gestured him to be silent and continued. "Your behavior is a subject for a separate conversation, but I don't want to lecture you now. I'd like to talk about good things, and I want to make a special mention of Barry." "I didn't expect him to," Austin grinned. "My grandson has figured out how to make me happy. He gave me something that helped me return to my youth." And then the old man nodded at Angelica. "Grandpa, what are you talking about?" Max asked. Angelica wanted to squeak that please don't say anything further, but under the imperious gaze of the elderly oligarch is numbed and could only listen to him telling her what she did for him. "And how you only had brains," Max said to his brother. And then Austin told that during the period of his life when he was in love with Casey, he, after learning that she had died, had been hurt himself. It was that one day, skiing in winter, he had fallen into a ravine and hit his head hard. The trauma led to amnesia. Austin himself was tormented by it, but for his family it was even convenient because he had forgotten so much about his love. He thought that in time his memory would come back, but it never did. Only fragments of it surfaced, but they were like pictures behind fogged glass, and only the appearance of Angelica in his life allowed him to look at them with all clarity. He remembered the many happy moments he had spent together with Casey. He remembered how he had wanted against all odds, but to go against his and her family's wishes, to get them together. "My great-grandfather was a great lover of antiquity," Austin sighed. "Despite the revolution, he managed to keep quite a bit of jewelry and art. I didn't share his passion, but one piece caught my eye. It was a necklace of emeralds. What pure stones they were. Their color reminded me of Zenaita's eyes. I decided that I would give them to her when she agreed to become mine. But I realized that my relatives would be against it, and that's an understatement. So I just took the necklace. They thought it had been stolen, and I kept quiet. I hid it at the dacha. There were hiding places in the walls of the dacha. I learned about them from my great-grandfather's diaries. One day I put a necklace in such a hiding place, and I tore out a page from the diary and burned it. That's it. And then Casey died. I lost my memory. I couldn't remember where the emeralds had gone. All I remembered was that I had taken them. But what had I done with them? I didn't remember anything for years, but thanks to her, Austin met Angelica's gaze. I remember everything. Grandpa, are you talking about that necklace that had the Iranian emeralds in it? Max rounded his eyes. But it was priceless. I know that better than anyone, grandson, grinned Austin. When I got out of the hospital, I sent reliable people to our cottage. To think of it, my men brought me the box, Austin said, pulling out a desk drawer and placing a carved box on it. He opened its lid, and all present saw a necklace of marvelous beauty made of large, dark green emeralds on a velvet backing. Angelica gasped. She had never seen such beauty in her life. And to think, these were real gems, and this jewelry was over 100 years old. I thought if I could turn back time, I'd give it to Casey, as a symbol of the love we had for each other. And now, I wanted to belong to the one who helped me remember everything, thereby giving me back the most precious thing in my life. There was silence in the study. Angelica looked at the emeralds, and her mind simply refused to recognize what she had heard. Was this even possible? Grandfather, Max was the first to break the silence. But she's just... Don't you dare contradict me, Austin shouted and pounded his fist on the table. If you say that because you think you're smarter than I am, then live with me and then give advice to old people. If you're sorry to see the money go, then you'd better get out of my sight. I've already given you a lot from the beginning. Other people start from scratch, but you have everything you want. I'm sorry, Max bowed his head. It's so unexpected, so generous. I'm just doing what I think is right, Austin said more calmly. And you, Barry, do you have anything to say? No, replied the boy. I can only accept your decisions, not challenge them. I'll trust your wisdom, grandfather. Look, this. Angelica stood up and even took a step back. It's too much. I can't accept it. Why not? Austin asked. Because Angelica was confused. It's not mine. It's yours now. I don't deserve it. Because you decided to, didn't you? You're a clever girl, kind and modest. But I decided. He easily pushed the box towards her. I want to thank you. And I thank you with this. You'll offend the old man if you refuse. But Angelica just felt cornered. I don't know what to do with it. I have nowhere to wear it, unless such a beauty should just be kept in a safe. And we don't have a safe. The girl looked pleadingly at the old man. Well, all right, he grinned. If you insist so much. The lid of the box slammed shut. I'm giving it to you after all. But not for nothing, of course. Everything will be formalized in the appropriate papers. This piece of jewelry means a lot to me. It's a memory of my love. Keep it then, Angelique said hastily. Let me finish, girl. Austin looked at her sternly, and she was silent, nodding. Austin said that Angelica must first accept the jewelry as a gift, and then, if she wanted it so badly, she could sell it to Austin. He'd pay full price for it, but the necklace will stay with him until it's time to divide his inheritance. And then, according to the will, it will be back in Angelique's possession, and then she can decide what to do with it. But, the girl looked at Austin, and he at her. She felt so impossible. She just couldn't believe that this was all happening to her. And yet she realized it clearly at the same time. And then she nodded. Do you agree, honey? Austin asked. Yes, she replied. In that case, smiled the old man. The lawyer laid out the necessary documents on the table. Here is the gift deed for the necklace. Sign it. In a few minutes, Angelica signed everything. Well, that's it. We've decided everything. Austin got up from the table. I don't know about you, but I'm a little tired and would love a cup of tea. Can I go now? Max asked. A meeting. At the branch you entrusted me with. It's scheduled for today. Go ahead, Austin said. Are you busy, Barry? No, I'm free today. Then you'll keep us company. The weather that day was cloudless and warm, but not too hot. Angelica leisurely drank tea, which was served with a variety of appetizers and desserts. "A rumor has reached me," Austin said. "So, gossip, that you're dating." "I had to tell Max that to explain her appearance in the house," Barry replied. "And then Selena found out about it. And there it was." "It happens," Austin grinned thoughtfully. "Tell me, darling, how do you like my grandson?" "Grandfather." Barry was indignant. "Well, he's a good boy," Angelica answered honestly. "But sometimes he's just unbearable. I'd rather not say anything." Barry tapped his spoon very loudly on the cup where he was stirring the sugar. "Everything is clear with you," said Austin. "Can the old man ask a favor of both of you?" "Sure, Grandpa. I'll personally do anything you say," Barry replied. "Ask Angelica out on a date." "What?" The girl flashed her eyes. "That's impossible." "Why not?" Austin asked. Because, what if I really did it and say that I wanted to do it before I saw you here today? Would you believe me?" Barry looked at her very carefully. Angelica sighed. She knew she could say that she wasn't interested in this cocky, opinionated guy at all. She knew she could refuse him now and Austin wouldn't be offended that she wasn't interested in his grandson. But she also knew she had to be honest with herself. The conversation over tea and important thoughts was interrupted by a phone call from Angelica's mother. "Daughter, where are you?" "I'm here alone cooking dinner for everyone." "At least you could help." "Yes, Mom. I'll be there soon," answered Angelica. "But I won't stay for dinner. Because I'm going on a date." "What date?" "Mom, I'll tell you all about it later. I'm busy right now." Angelica politely but firmly ended the conversation. She knew that she still had a lot to think about. She had to finally decide how to tell her parents that she was now fabulously rich, that their whole family was now fabulously rich. In fact, it seemed to her more and more that the best thing to do was to tell the truth, even though it was so unbelievable. And then they would think together what to do with this wealth. Although now, of course, you can do literally anything. Father will be able to go on vacation or quit his job altogether because he needs serious treatment. Jack and Anna will have tons of new toys. By the way, they could go to the sea as a family. Sam wanted to pay for his university education and give him a car as soon as he got his license and could drive. But Angelica also knew that all this would be a little later. But right now she had made a very important and necessary decision to try a relationship with a man from whom she wanted to run away to the end of the world.